Thank you for joining. We are giving it just a few more seconds for people to continue to join. We have uploaded some content for you in the attachments tab of this webinar. Feel free to go over it as you wait. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. My name is Gopal Rangaswamy, and I'm today's moderator. I welcome all of you to this webinar titled Action Your Strategy by Building Awesome Data and Analytics Teams. If you have any questions at any time during the webinar, please use Ask a Question tab located below the player. In our last webinar, we spoke about the complex challenges and 4 guiding principles to stay modern: clarity of direction and roadmap to get there, modular approach to build and sustain solutions, cross-functional teams aligned towards the same goals, and innovative models to access talent on demand. In today's webinar with Forrester, we will focus on providing insights to customers looking to build awesome DNA teams to support their DNA strategy, discuss challenges faced by leaders like you in this quest from the Great Resignation to evolving technologies to talent shortages in the market, provide recommendations to deal with these challenges, and share how InfoSeps is helping customers address these challenges. Shashank and Boris Evelson are our speakers for today. Shashank Garg is a co-founder and CEO of InfoSeps, a global data and analytics solutions firm. As an expert in the field of data management, analytics, and cloud, he is a trusted advisor to CXOs of several Fortune 500 companies. He is known for his ability to help business leaders solve problems using the power of data and achieve rapid and transformational results. Boris Evelson, VP and Principal Analyst of Forrester Research, is our guest today. Boris is a leading expert in insights-driven business capabilities. He delivers strategic guidance, helping enterprises define insights-driven business strategies, governance, and architectures, and identify vendors and technologies that help them put information to use in business processes and end-user experiences. Boris, what does it mean to be insights-driven?
Excellent, Gopal. Thank you so much for having me co-present here. And Shashank, looking forward to, once again, to collaborating with you on this webinar. It was a few years ago when analysts such as myself and other economists predicted that insight-driven businesses were going to grow 8 to 10 times. That's not 8 or 10% faster, 8 to 10 times faster than the global economy, than industry averages, than competition. And today at Forrester, we absolutely are seeing this coming to fruition. When our clients self-assess themselves, and when we help them assess their what we call insight-driven business maturity, and we compare advanced firms to beginner firms, we see absolutely amazing results. And this is hot off the presses. The 2021 data just came in a few weeks ago, and as you can see, advanced firms are 2.5 times more likely to report double-digit year-over-year growth, and 8.5 times more likely to report growing at 20% or more year-over-year as compared to beginner firms. So the correlation is absolutely amazing and proves the prediction from a few years ago. And when we look at a lot of case studies that we help our clients with, we do see very, very tangible and solid return on these investments, somewhere between 2 to 6 times return on any investment that you make into people, process, data, technology, as it relates to improving your insight-driven business capabilities. So what does it mean to be an insight-driven firm? It's not just about transforming data into signals. That's how we label data aware firms. Pretty much, I would say most of you on the phone are probably somewhere in that data aware stage, but we want you to go to the next step. We want you to start observing and learning and experimenting and improving, and start transforming signals into insights, right? That's the capability of a data-driven firm. But we also want you not to stop there. We want you to go further and start scaling these insights, embed them in all of your systems of work and all of your digital workspaces, and start taking actions on these insights so that you can start linking these insights to actions and tangible business outcomes. So that entire cycle is what today we call insight-driven business. Artificial intelligence obviously is all over the place. We do not talk about any enterprise technology where AI is not taking a foothold. And while AI is helping us and helping enterprises get richer insights, deeper insights, and further helping us democratize insights, AI requires some additional TLC, tender loving care, in terms of building the models, training the models, and doing all of the model operations. So yes, AI brings additional benefits, but also requires additional care. And as a result of the complexity, right? Hopefully, everyone on the phone understands that entire two cycles, insight driven and the connected intelligence that I just walked you through, they're not that simple to achieve. And as a result, majority of our clients make this statement, and I'm sure you on the phone are either significantly or at least partially suffering from this. Yeah, you've got a lot of data, but you're starving for insights. And when we look at the profile of our clients over the last few years, there is a slight improvement. As you can see, there is a slight decrease in beginner firms. There is a slight increase in intermediate firms. Advanced firms are kind of staying steady, still in a single digits. And then these are self-assessments, right? When you do a self-assessment, you typically tend to exaggerate it a little bit. So my educated guess is that down on the ground, the picture is not as rosy as these self-assessments show. So what is it that you all need to do to advance to the next level of insight-driven business capabilities? Well, all insight-driven businesses need to excel at 5 competencies, right? The usual people, process, technology, and data. But today, Shashank and I are going to spend most of the time talking about the people part of the equation. So how do you create an insights organization? How do you create a cross-functional insights in the organization to support the advanced insight-driven business capability? And hence, your very first challenge, because it is still not very clear, how does one find this perfect balance between, on the one hand, you do need to control this, you need to govern this, you need to rationalize your resources. Obviously, no one has bottomless pockets and budgets. So how do you do all that? But at the same time, and we'll talk about more about this in a couple of slides, how do you maintain agility and adaptability and resilience, which is very, very important in today's climate, when systemic risks, events should just keep piling on us. So finding that perfect middle ground between control and agility and adaptability is very tough. And we at Forrester think that some kind of a variation, some kind of a manifestation of a hub and spoke organizational structure. We'll talk about this in detail later on, but hub and spoke is probably as close as you can get to that best practice, that middle ground, finding that perfect balance between governance and agility. That's what we see with our clients. But Shashank, I'll turn this over to you and see how do you at InfoSeps approach this? What are some of your recommendations, and what do you see in your clients?
Thank you, Boris. Once again, a pleasure to be talking to you on this webinar. And thank you so much for setting the context. And it was interesting to see in the last 3 years, you talked about maturity of customers and the fact that the number of customers in the advanced bucket hasn't really moved in the last 3 years. And for me, and as a solutions provider to large enterprises, I'm on the other side, right? So I'm often in the house working with these customers on their transformational journeys, and I'm very aware of the challenges that the customers face to be able to make that leap. So what I'm going to do is focus, and again, because the focus of this webinar is on the people side and how do we build the teams and how do we structure them, I'm going to take some real life examples of some implementations, variations of the hub and spoke model that you spoke about, and talk through what we're trying to achieve and what really works, so these strategies for success. So to begin with, let's talk about one of our customers is a very, very large bank, a large global bank. And they started their journey becoming data driven about 10 years ago. And back then, in the before scenario, they obviously started with a very, very centralized model, right? So an enterprise data platform, the good old data warehouse, data marts, analytical apps, everything centralized, right? But we know from experience, right? If you fast forward a few years, we know that central teams will struggle on the user engagement side, right? And they will never be able to react to fast changes that are required to run modern businesses. So you often see a huge sort of shadow IT coming up in the business unit. So you've got central IT, you've got shadow IT, and then they are doing anything and everything, right from data wrangling to data ingestion to analytics. Not ideal. So they started the journey to move towards a decentralized model where we shifted the responsibilities of the data marts and analytics to the business units, the spokes, right? So the business teams now work with the central data team to build a common data fabric. So there's no longer this monolithic data lake or a data platform. It's a data fabric, which is being consumed by business units across the enterprise. And the function of the central team now is architecture, governance, and platform support. And all the build out, whether it's smarts, analytics, has been shifted to the spokes or the business units, as you spoke about earlier, Boris. I can tell you from my experience that this transition and the journey is not easy. There are real changes that you need to make in the way you operate, and most importantly, changing people is always hard, right? Walking them through this change is always hard. So when we started this journey, we first worked on setting up the foundation, sort of defining the standards, best practices, operating models, and everything around it, right? And then put a strong governance team to ensure that we are able to adhere to those standards, right? There's a lot of effort put in building capabilities of the business units. So they put together, this data literacy, they call it a data literacy initiative, but it's really about the increasing capabilities around technologies, tools, data, processes, agile principles, right? So we put that strong training working with the L&D team. And then on the vendor side, because there are, this is a journey that you can't take alone, as you talked about earlier, we shifted the vendors more to a managed outcome model and not necessarily a resourcing model, right? And what that does is that allows the BUs to really move fast, right? Once those, vendors have been accustomed to the common standards, right? And that sort of helped the bank offload a lot of their talent concerns. And obviously, and as an end result, reduce the proliferation of shadow IT. So still working through some of the challenges, but I would say they're definitely inching towards the advanced bucket that you just talked about, Boris. Another variation, and this is a very different, a slightly different scenario. This is a global publishing company with several independent divisions and very diverse business operations. So they are in data intelligence business, they are in publishing business, they host global events. And until about 2 years ago, as you would expect, a lot of this business was very physical, right, and was not virtual. And then the pandemic hit, right, and everything changed. And in the old days, all the data initiatives were run directly by these divisions, and hence were limited to mostly operational reporting or maybe some descriptive analytics, right? But when the pandemic hit, there was this need to, something as basic as, do we have a uniform customer data hub, right? Which we all can leverage and see how's the customer interacting with our different divisions. That didn't exist, right? So we started building this central data platform just in the last 18 months. And given that the technology is advanced, we decided to use the data mesh principles, which means that we were managing each data domain as an independent service, right? And this allowed them to benefit from all the work that was done by the BUs in the past, right? The central team creates and maintains a data catalog to help the units understand the data better, and then is continuously, the solution squad, as they call it, is continuously writing APIs to enable the business units or divisions to build their self-service apps and recommendation engines, right? Making this structure real is definitely harder than what we spoke about, the traditional hub and spoke, because you need to get two things right. Yeah? You need to get a strong central foundational architecture team, and then you need to build sort of these they call divisional squads, right? Which is this cross-functional team made of people with different skill sets who are coordinating outcomes with the central team. What really worked with them, and again, they're still in that journey. I wouldn't say they have gotten there. We started 18 months ago. One thing that I noticed is they have really embraced agile principles. So everything that they do, they start small and they iteratively add features, and they are doing it through cross-functional teams. And when you set up any cross-functional team, you would know that it takes much longer, initially, right? But then once the team is set, because of the fact they're sitting in different areas, they bring in, the information flow is so fast that they're now delivering at 2x the speed that they expected. Another thing that they have done is they've chosen to put their divisional squads, the spokes, in the geographies where the divisions are. They're a global firm, so not everything is centralized in the US. So there are teams in Europe, there are teams in Asia, and then they put this, which I quite like, is they put this certification process where every vendor that works with them is required to undergo a certification by working with the central team. So if their division in APAC wants to run with the BU and work on certain outcomes, they have to work for a certain time and go through a certification process with the central team. What that again ensures is that the common things that they put in place, the principles, the standards, they're fully up to speed, and they're not going and building their own thing, right? Very, very important. Another example that I like to take is actually closer to a central model, the good old central model. And this is from one of our oldest customers at a large global media firm. But what's unique about them is 80% of their revenue comes from one business, which is selling ads, right? The ad sales business, right? So that sort of, it's one BU, it's big, that's where most of the data is. So they've chosen to continue to operate in a centralized structure. And because they have existed, the structure has existed for a while, they have really built up their data products. So, they at any point of time, their central team is obviously managing the central data platform, but on the top of that, they have data products, essentially a combination of data models, policies, and purpose-built analytics. Every product has a product life cycle. They are investing in branding. They're doing road shows, wiki pages, how-to videos, end user support, making it really easy for users to consume because they know the use cases, most of the use cases. And then some of the stuff like the self-service, advanced analytics, or exchanging data with external providers, it is done in the business units or the spokes. Right? And what has really worked for them, or if I see what's been their mantra for success, they've had the luxury of having common, stable, long-term teams for the hub, right? And there are lots of advantages, when you operate in that model, right? And they've chosen to build these teams with both their internal talent and vendor partners, right? But they tightly control it, right? And they're able to do, put a strong focus on team development. We have had, over the last 13 years, I've seen developers attain leadership roles in technology and with even at the spokes, right? Which is not very common, right? So they've had teams who were started in the central teams and now work for the business units, right? And another thing that I like about them that they do on an annual basis, again, it's a strong central team. They run these innovation events on an annual basis, right? So put up a big event in Miami. They invite all the current vendors, prospect new vendors, and give them a set of challenges and work through a sort of a 4-week process. And that's what they use to identify new vendors. And I find that very unique, right? Because we're moving so fast and there's so much help available out there that doing this is really helping. With that, before we move on to the next section, and again, we're going to talk more about, Boris, just challenges around building DNA teams and hiring and where do you find this talent. I thought it'd be worthwhile to ask our audience just a quick question around what they believe they are most likely to do in the next few weeks. And the options are on your screen. Let's give everybody a minute or so. Gopal, is the poll on? Is the audience able to answer?
The poll is on.
Okay. Let me know when you see the results. Boris, while we're waiting for the audience to put in their results, if you were to guess, what would be your answer if you were working in an enterprise?
Well, I'll give you an easy answer. I think it's going to be D, all of the above. There is just so much difference between firms, and you yourself highlighted a really great 3 case studies where firms are trying to achieve the same results but are going at it with different operating models, which is absolutely what we see. So I think between hiring people who are not a perfect fit but 50% role fit, I think is going to be very important in today's labor shortage climate. I think outsourcing, we'll talk about the benefits of outsourcing later in the webinar, and I definitely know that a lot of our clients are increasing their investments in all insight-driven business capabilities, not just people, but digitizing processes and data, etc. So I'm guessing it's all of the above.
Yeah, I see some of the results coming in. I think most people have answered between A and B. There's a couple of answers on C and D, but I agree. We have customers all over the place. We have so much has changed in our space in the last 18 months. It's not even funny. So I would have answered D, and I would want all our customers to consider doing all these 3 things given the current scenario.
Yeah.
With that, why don't we go to the next part? So, Boris, in your mind, what are sort of your prediction in terms of talent and just the challenges that you see around the talent side? Yeah.
Well, that's the key word. The challenges is the key word. I mean, you said it yourself and you're part of the presentation, right? That sacramental phrase. And then COVID hit and everything changed, right? And it's not just COVID these days. Some of my colleagues at Forrester wrote this excellent research document on how systemic risk events are just going to pile up on us at an ever increasing speed and frequency and severity, right? And it's not just pandemic. We've all seen risk events based on geopolitical kind of a trends in our world. We've seen climate changes, right? We all experienced that unpredictable Texas freeze, right, which disrupted the oil and gas supply chain for weeks, I think. Remember that ship being stuck in the Suez Canal earlier this year, that disrupted about a quarter of world supply chain. So these events are just going to keep piling up on us, and the only constant these days is really change, and therefore we do see our clients trying to adjust to all of these realities. So what are the realities today and going forward? So first of all of the digitization efforts have increased, at least by an order of magnitude, because now that you're working remotely, you can't really push paper right around the office, so you need to digitize. New architectures are going to require different skills and different responsibilities. You yourself mentioned a data catalog as a key platform, key capability. Who manages that? Is that a responsibility of a data team? Maybe, but data catalogs are most frequently used in the context of BI and analytics. So is it the BI analytics team that manages data catalog, right? How do you divide and conquer that world? Third bullet point, modern platforms and solutions are overlapping. For example, we just talked about data catalog. Well, data catalog doesn't really, most data catalogs do not do, let's say, query federation and data virtualization, but data virtualization platforms can do data cataloging. What about BI semantic layer, right? So where do you do what? Where do you do your data cataloging and data governance? Where do you do your query virtualization? And where do you keep all of the business metrics for your business intelligence semantic layer? You can do any of those in those types of platforms. So how do you solve these overlaps? Data complexity is just going to increase, and therefore this whole disconnect between business and IT that they, for ages, ever since I've been in this business for about 40 years, business and IT have been speaking different languages, and that is only going to increase in complexity as data complexity grows. And then everyone's impatience, I mean, these insights-driven business capabilities are not inexpensive to create, deploy, and maintain, and get benefits out of. So there'll be a lot of impatience from the C-level executives for underused and non-actionable data. So as a result of all this, everyone, our prediction is that everyone is going to be challenged with people skills, talent, attracting, retaining, etc., talent. These are some of the numbers from our recent research when we ask our clients what are your biggest challenge in terms of executing your data and analytics vision. At least fifth are saying that the skills, collaboration between teams, organizational issues, and it's not just technology skills, it is business skills, business competencies. And whenever I look at these numbers, I take them with a grain of salt, because I don't know what I don't know plays partially into these surveys. So when I talk to clients, I do see much starker situation. I think it's a lot more than fifth of organizations that are experiencing skills shortage. And the same story on AI. I think these numbers are quite low. I would assume somewhere between a third to maybe half of organizations are being challenged with AI skills. So that's the state of events that we are seeing them. So really curious, Shashank, now to turn this back to you and see how you are handling this. Well, what are your mitigation strategies for skills, talent, challenges that everyone is experiencing?
Yeah. Thanks for sharing the research around it. And when I talk to customers, this is a topic that how to build the teams. And I spent a lot of time on this topic in the last 12 months, much more than I've ever done before. And that's for a reason, because we know that with the combination of the opportunities that are out there, with the digitization that is happening that you just talked about, and the remote working challenges, right? I mean, where a lot of people are feeling disconnected, a little disengaged, maybe want to do something different. We are experiencing a significant churn in the marketplace when it comes to talent, and that's impacting everybody. I just pulled this up, a few days ago from the Forbes article where Microsoft is talking about 41%, and these are disruptive numbers. We're not used to operating like this. And especially in our business, Boris, in DNA, you require continuity. You require the continuity of the context. So you just train something for a year in the business context, and 40% of them are gone. So I just want people to absorb, how big of a challenge it is today. But with that said, with every challenge, there are solutions. So I'm going to make sort of 3 firm recommendations, which I've given a lot of thought. I've had a lot of conversations with our customers. These are things that we've tried, and sort of what's working. I think as if you are an executive at a customer, you have to look at, you have to move away from trying to build everything from scratch. There is not enough time to do so. So the more you can look for reusable solutions, whatever snippets of code, this could mean processes, this could mean frameworks, definitions, code snippets. I'm not talking about rigid products here. I'm not talking about moving from one product to the other, but just take whatever is reusable and start tailoring it. And if I were you, I would have an expectation from my vendor that what are the reusable solutions that you bring to the table, which you can tailor for my needs. And again, I'm not talking about brand new cloud platforms. I'm talking about code snippets or frameworks here. These are some of the solutions that we have built as a firm to kind of cover the spectrum of challenges which we see today and tomorrow. But I'm sure your vendors have these, and you may internally have some of this. You just have to create the processes to mine them for future use. Second, whenever you're building teams, and this was how we used to recruit at least a few years ago. I need an Informatica developer, I need a Tableau developer, I need a Teradata developer, or a Snowflake developer. We stopped doing that 2 years ago, because we realized that the technology is going to change so fast, and by the time that Snowflake developer comes in and sets himself up, it's time for me to reconsider the platform. So we are saying we don't need a Snowflake or a Tableau developer. We need to hire for higher level competencies. So we need a data engineer, then a cloud engineer, then an analytics and data management professional who can go through these platforms. And if I decide to switch, I don't have to switch people. Switching people is expensive. It should be easy to switch technology and make these people, because they're embedded in my business, they understand my processes, and they can make those shifts very, very quickly. So this is how we organize our competencies. We look at cloud and data engineering. This is about creating large-scale platforms. The second one is all about the full stack implementation using best-of-breed tools. Consulting skills are all about that business skills that you talked about a few minutes ago, Boris. And lastly, just running everything using agile principles around the process side. So build your skills in these areas would be a strong recommendation from me. And lastly, when you're building teams, because you have no choice but to build your people, because you would never get somebody who's 100% ready in the market. And the development methodologies talk about these profiles of people, whether you have I-shaped profiles, which are experts in one technology, called T-shaped. So we are starting to see sort of pie-shaped profiles, which is you're deep in at least one or 2 areas, and then you have a lot of skills in the areas surrounding it. Those are the kind of people you need on your teams. Definitely invest in building your training muscle. If you don't have it internally, go hire. They're available. Invest in these data literacy programs to create what you call Boris Citizen X, because you want people on the business side, running those spokes, right? So they need to be equipped with these skills. And then, as we talked about in one of the earlier global media customers, right, that they run these innovation challenges, these hackathons. Definitely invest to foster continuous learning in your organizations, right? With that, that's all I wanted to share, Boris, on this topic. I think to sort of, we're coming towards the end. So sort of my final question to you, Boris, based on where we are, what's your advice for customers to building these teams?
Yeah, thank you for that, Shashank, and it's great to see how we are aligned. So before we talk about technical skills and our advice to clients, let's start with business skills. All right, there is a reason we say it's insight-driven business. There is a reason we say business intelligence, business analytics, right? Catch the drift. Business must own this. You know, business owns data and analytics in the organization, period, and end of story. I mean, we created some of these catchy new titles, but we all know who these people are. So the evangelists are your chief data and analytics officers. Your data catalysts are your business analysts, and your data wranglers are your data analysts. And because data is all over the place, you also need a business know-how where to find that data. But regardless of what these catchy titles are, business must absolutely own your stand-up and understand that IT can no longer own data and analytics. Data and analytics behave very differently from any other IT assets. Data changes every second, right? The other IT assets such as software and application, they don't change every second, right? So very different kind of assets to manage. So all of the business leaders need to really double down on this ownership, double down on getting all of the business decision makers to train them in data literacy, data visualization, and data storytelling. Basically, we use the 80-20 ratio, right? Up to 80% of all of the data and analyticals needs, requirements, business decision makers really need to be able to fulfill on their own. Now, obviously, they cannot do this without support of professionals. So number one, hire and train more and more data engineers. If you, everyone talks about data scientists these days, but if you look at any of the job hunting, job advertising, job posting site, I will bet you anything you'll see at least 10 times more job postings for data engineers than for data scientists. So data engineer is the hottest commodity. Hire, outsource, train as many as you can. That's the top advice. I'm so glad you you mentioned hiring for skills as opposed to specific technology. That is extremely important. So we try to impress on our clients to cross-train everyone for resiliency and adaptability, because again, absolutely, you don't know what's going to hit you in the next morning when you wake up, because insight-driven capabilities are now scaling across the enterprise, right? They're not siloed anymore. You need to build up your operations, right? So it's not just development, it's operations, right? DevOps, data ops. In AI, we call it model ops. So those people who do testing and releases and version control and monitoring of how things perform in production, very important role. Governance is no longer just about data governance. Analytics, business intelligence need their own governance. So you need to hire and train individuals to handle that. And because we want our clients to have that 80-20 ratio, where end users are very self-sufficient. Yeah, we want them to be self-sufficient, but they need support, right? So you need to carve out roles for some of these data engineers to almost have full-time jobs to act as level 1 and level 2 support for the end users. So lots and lots of best practices and recommendation. At the end of the day, conceptually, this is what this looks like. Data and analytics is a shared responsibility between IT, the upper left quadrant, a line of business, and not the quadrant, the upper left circle, the line of business, the functional areas, the upper right circle, and data and analytics professionals. And it is, the lines of demarcation are not that clear. And as you showed yourself, Shashank, in your 3 different case studies, right, that it works differently for different clients. So it's more like a Venn diagram as opposed to a separate organization. doing this, so you don't want to fall behind competition. Expand, recruit, hire, outsource, do everything. Lots and lots of very specific recommendations, and we make those recommendations again by 5 competencies: people, process, data, technology, and strategy. And recommendations differ by the state of your maturity. So specific maturity, I mean, start by creating a chief data officer, chief analytics officer organization. Build a center of excellency or a competency center. And as you migrate to a more intermediate level, make sure that your data and analytics people are sitting side by side to IT organization, not really inside, and they have cross-functional responsibilities, reporting responsibilities to business and IT. And once you go into an advanced organizational kind of a structure, that's where the hub and spoke comes in, and that's where operations, right, continuous monitoring and improving comes in, and that requires separate and special skills. So lots and lots of recommendations, lots more than we can just cover on a single webinar. So Shashank, back to you for some closing remarks.
Thank you, and thank you for all those insights. Just because it's sort of the time of the year where we're planning for the next year, I'll make sort of 3 specific ones that I'm advising customers. It's something we spoke earlier. Based on whatever we've seen in the marketplace around the talent, the innovation that's happening, the lag that people have in their digitalization and the DNA technologies, I just see the need for doubling down on the investment side. So if you're planning your budgets, it's that time of the year, I would ask for higher. And I will tell you, it's going to pay back, as Boris said, anywhere from 2 to 6x in very short time. That's number one. Number two, it may be a good idea, and again, it's the time of the year to reimagine your vendor landscape. If you're working with vendors who largely provided only resources to staff your teams and you ran it in a very central manner, it's likely going to go after a hub and spoke model where you need vendors with the maturity to run managed outcome models. You should expect them to bring in reusable solutions, so you're not starting every project from zero. You're like 20% complete on day one. You want to work with a partner who is growing those sort of higher end skills and not just technologies, and then look at it holistically. One thing that I'm starting to see now, Boris, is this work from home or a hybrid work model is going to continue, and especially for large banks, it's very important that we're able to support that, protect customer data in a work from home model. And I can tell you from experience, not every vendor can do it. So look for that as you reimagine your vendor landscape. Lastly, increase your focus on building DNA teams for the sort of midterm. Hire for competencies, invest in cross-skilling. Boris, you said that. Don't look for unicorns. They don't exist. If you, I say not even 50%. If you find somebody who's willing to learn, hire, make him a data engineer, and definitely invest in your Citizen X, those business users who are gonna, do these citizen data scientists, citizen data analysts, citizen data engineers, right? Through data literacy and technology training or process training, data training. Those are 3 recommendations from my side, Boris. Gopal, I think we've sort of covered all the content we had prepared for. Over to you.
Hey, Shashank and Boris, that was very informational and insightful. I hope the attendees are able to leverage the information you guys have provided and drive their talent strategy for DNA and organizational insights. Attendees, please use Ask a Question tab to ask questions to Boris or Shashank. We will go over by a few minutes to address any of the questions you may have. Boris, I have the first question for you. Even Shashank, you may want to take that after Boris addresses it. What are the next steps for an enterprise to build on their DNA strategy?
So we already, obviously, the entire webinar was about some best practices, but if there is one first step that I often recommend, and I see clients get a lot of mileage out of that, is to do some kind of internal assessment and not just assess your current state by getting together some top key stakeholders. I recommend launching an internal survey to all of the stakeholders. So understand what is a business think in terms of your maturity versus IT versus data analytics people. What are more senior executives versus middle managers versus hands-on practitioners think? What are people in your North America versus in the EMEA regions think? Understand the difference. I promise you, if you do a survey like that, the picture of your current state is going to be a lot more complex than you may potentially think. So I do recommend doing something like that. So you would understand where the challenges are coming from. What group of your internal stakeholders is reporting more challenges versus less. I think that's a great first step to take.
I would, Gopal, and I fully agree with Boris, but just because of the times we are in, I would recommend the audience, the customers, sort of focus on highlighting the people aspects in that survey. So ask questions like, what are the skills you need? What kind of trainings we can provide? Who are the people who can really play those citizen X roles? Use this to identify those roles, because we are headed towards sort of challenging times when it comes to the DNA teams. So include that as a part of the survey.
Thank you. The next question is to you, Boris. Why should an enterprise consider outsourcing DNA projects to vendors?
Yeah, that's my favorite question. So I've been doing this for about 40 years, and if there is one thing that I learned is that even I don't know everything that any professional in this space needs to know. There are so many moving pieces in your data architecture, in your technology, in priorities, responsibilities, budgets, etc., who owns what, etc. There's so many moving pieces that no one can write a definitive book on how to do this right. So at the end of the day, this is still partially science and partially art. It's all about experience. It's all about accumulating best practices, and you can never accumulate enough. And Shashank, I'm sure you will echo this, that with every new project that you do, you run into more challenges and you accumulate more lessons learned. So don't, my advice is always don't learn from your own mistakes, because you will make mistakes. There is no ways around it. So rather than learning from your own mistakes, learn from the mistakes of the others, and at least partially outsource, at least bring some subject matter experts who've done this not a few times but hundreds of times.
Yeah, I would just add that in addition to what Boris said, it's important to have sort of a vendor strategy and be clear about, as Boris said, see, where you are in your journey and what exactly you need. You just need resources. You need a vendor who can do managed outcomes. You need a vendor who can support in setting up architecture or solution squads. I think, you have to be clear there. So, and that can be very, very transformational. Yeah.
There is a follow-up question to the first question. Are there any established assessment surveys you can recommend, either of you?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure all analyst firms. So we have our own in terms of the maturity assessment. We have data maturity assessments. I'm actually working on another one, trying to assess the effectiveness of this environment, because maturity and effectiveness are related but different things. So if you're a client of Forrester, absolutely reach out to us. We'll set you up with one. Shashank, I'm sure you've got your own kind of a current state assessments.
So yeah, either that, or if you want something very tailor-made for your specific needs, because you think your environment has some complexities, unique complexities that the others may not, then definitely reach out to somebody like us, and we can run our own assessments and get back with an advisory.
Okay. The
standard
next
offering.
the next question is around InfoSeps. What differentiates InfoSeps from other DNA solution providers?
That's my favorite question. Thank you for asking. As we discussed, I think different vendors bring in different expertise. And when you look at InfoSeps, there are two or three things that are very different about us. They're probably one of the only pure play data and analytics solutions provider that operates at a global scale. Versus the other large system integrators who do everything, not just DNA. Which means that when we look at the problems and solving them, we have a radically different approach to both reusability and building awesome DNA teams. And some of what we discussed hopefully gave you a flavor of that. So if you're looking for a pure play vendor who can help you end to end and comes in with strong reusability and has grown DNA teams very, very differently than how others do it, we would be the firm to work with.
Thank you, Shashank. Unfortunately, we are at time and have to end this webinar at this time. Thank you all for attending and see you next time. Thanks, Shashank and Boris.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gopal. Thank you, Boris. This was great. Thank you.